Today I'm going to be sharing with you one of my favorite recipes from childhood. What is up, you guys? I am back again filming another intro in my car. I feel like I would love to say that this is unorthodox, but I've said that the last 3 times in the last 2 weeks that I've had filmed sitting in this driver's seat. But I am my kid's taxi cab driver, and sometimes the only time I have to myself is when I'm sitting in the car waiting for them to be done with an activity. So today I'm taking advantage of the time that I have while I'm sitting here to film an intro of a video I've been super excited to share. So my name is Kira if you are new and this is the first time that you're stopping on one of my videos, and this video is actually in collab with a gigantic amount of people. I've actually lost count with the amount of people that have decided to participate. So I will make sure to leave the link to the playlist down below. It is hosted by Tiffany over at Small Town 6, and she asked me if I wanted to participate in this, and I was really excited because it was to share a recipe that was from childhood that makes you think of fall. And so I don't think that this is the recipe that makes me think most of childhood, but I feel like this is the recipe that makes me think most of fall growing up, because Halloween falls during the fall time, and every single Halloween without fail, my mom did it again this year with no children in the house. It's just tradition for her, and I did the same thing, and I do the same thing, is to make a pot of stew. And she always called it her witch's brew, which I thought was pretty cool because she always had what looked like a giant cauldron on the stove all day, bubbling and cooking this delicious stew. So whether you were trick-or-treating or manning the door for trick-or-treaters, or you were just working that day, dinner was done. It was on the stove and it was ready. So you could eat before you went, you could come home in the middle, you could eat after, you could take a quick break in between the doorbell ringing and shove a few bites in your mouth. She just always had that, and like fresh baked Italian bread from King Cullen, and she would just have that with butter, and we would dunk our bread and butter in our stew, and it was just so good. And I wasn't a huge fan growing up. I feel like not a lot of kids like stews and soups because it's messy and it's all in one bowl, but as I grew up, I really just grew to love it. My mom's stew is a little different. It's a red based stew, which is pretty, again, like that unorthodox as to like the normal stew. Usually stew is like brown based, but my mom does it red based, and it's the only stew I've actually ever really liked. So it's the only stew I've really ever eaten, is to do it that way. So when I see someone do stew a different way, I'm usually like, whoa, because it's something I'm not used to, but I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So I cooked this for my family and filmed it for you guys on Halloween. So I'm excited to share with you guys what we ate. Don't forget to go click on that description box and check out the giant list of everybody else sharing childhood fall favorite recipes. And I'm going to take you down to my counter in my kitchen and share with you guys the stew that my mama had for me every single year growing up as a kid. All right, you guys, so here are the ingredients that you're going to need to make my mom's stew. I do personally tweak it myself just a little bit differently, but in this recipe, I want to try and keep it as authentic to my mom as possible. So we are going to be using a really good cut of chunked stew meat. So you're going to make this to the size that suits your family best, but I usually use about 2 to 4 pounds of stew meat for each recipe. And then otherwise, we're going to need a can of string beans. We're going to need a can of tomato sauce. You're going to need like 1 small bag of the whole baby carrots. You're going to need 5 russet potatoes. You'll need some parm cheese, about 4 cloves of garlic, 2 shallots, and a little bit of tomato paste. So here's a good look at that stew meat. It's roughly about 4 pounds, like I said, and sometimes I'll take a pair of scissors when I take it out and I'll cut the stew meat in smaller pieces because you want the meat to be able to fall apart. We're not cooking this in a crock pot. We're cooking it right on the stove. So you want to be able to have the meat small enough that it cooks down to that really tender consistency that we want the meat to be. But we're going to start off by chopping our veggies. So I have 5 cloves of garlic minced here. I know I probably said 4, but more garlic the better. And then I have both of our shallots diced here on the cutting board. I'm going to put like about a tablespoon of olive oil into a pan onto the stove, and once it gets hot, we're going to add our garlic and our onion, and we're going to cook it down probably about 4 to 5 minutes. You want that garlic to be good and cooked and rendered. You want those shallots to be translucent, and you want the whole room to smell like it. And then you're going to go ahead and add in your stew meat. Salt and pepper it really, really good. And what we're going to do is braise it. So you want to keep it on medium to high heat, and you're just going to keep turning that meat until all sides are brown, because if it's browned on the outside, it's going to lock in all of the juices and the flavors that we're going to give it over the next couple of hours. You can see now that everything's been cooked on all sides, and then now we're going to cover it with water. It took me about 4 cups of water to cover the meat, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to let that stew down on medium to high heat for about an hour. You'll start to notice that there's very little water left. You'll start to see the meat start to poke back through. Then we're going to add our carrots in. We're going to mix it, and then you're going to add more water so that your carrots are covered again. Just another 1 cup of water. Once that starts to stew down again, I would say another 45 minutes, and you start to see your veggies poking through and it looks like there's no water left, we're going to throw in our cubed potatoes. So I peeled all 5 potatoes and I cut them in between quarters and 6s, depending on how big the potatoes were. But these don't take very long to cook. So you're going to throw these in the last 45 minutes or so. And then you're going to throw those on top of your carrots and meat that have stewed down. And we're going to go back again and we're going to cover it with water. Another 4 cups is what's going to cover those potatoes. You're going to give it a good mix. You want everything to be covered and pushed underneath that flavorful water that we're building. You can see I poured water in, but it does not look like water. It's because you've been just gathering and stewing flavor at the bottom of the pot. So you're going to let that cook for another 35 minutes or so until the potatoes are tender. And then now we're going to throw in our can of string beans. We're going to throw in our can of sauce, and we're going to throw in 2 tablespoons of, and maybe more, it really depends on the thickness that you like, but I usually go for about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. Now I say, or maybe more, because one thing for me with recipes, you guys, is you need to tweak it for what works best for you. Like I said, I don't do this exact recipe the way my mom does it now. Like I don't use canned string beans. I use fresh beans just because that's what I personally prefer. I will use my own sauce. Like if I have some sauce made in the refrigerator, I'll use my own sauce as opposed to like a can of sauce that my mom uses. So whatever works best for your family, you can continue to keep trying this recipe. Like my girlfriend says when she makes stew, it's not a red based stew, it's a brown based stew, but she puts it over noodles, even with potatoes in there. That's not something my family would ever do. So it's just whatever suits your family. So you'll see now that most of that water got absorbed by the potatoes, but we just threw in that can of sauce and the string beans, and look at the color and the vibrancy of all of that. But now just throwing in those couple of tablespoons of the tomato paste is what's going to be that final thing that you need to add to just kind of bring all of the thickness together. Now, I will add about a half a cup of Parm cheese and then another good dose of salt and pepper, because you're putting things in like potatoes and stuff which are very, very bland without that extra salt and flavor. So I will put in my salt and I will put in the Parm cheese. Parmesan cheese is very salty, so if you're going to add the Parm cheese, add it. Taste as you go, you guys. That is the biggest thing for me. Just continue to keep tasting, but once you have that consistency right with the tomato paste, then you just put in that Parm cheese. You can go back and forth and play with your salt content and your pepper, and then you're just going to go ahead and you're going to let that sit on the stove for maybe like another 15 or 20 minutes for the tomato paste and the tomato sauce to cook, and then that is it, you guys. Look at that beauty. The flavor is just so on point, and I'm disappointed in my childhood self for not trying this and loving it sooner, because it really took my adult palate to appreciate the flavors of this. Like, just the amount of times that you add the water and you let it stew down, the meat just gets so incredibly tender. And the green beans and the carrots are just the perfect amount of veggie. I love the nice chunk of potato, because when you break it open and then all like the flavors of the sauce and stuff have like baked inside of the potato, it's so good. And then the crusty bread. I don't have a good Italian bread that I can get here, but the sourdough bread from Costco, that shelf stable kind, it bakes up perfectly, and with just a little bit of butter and extra Parm cheese on top, this, you guys, feels exactly like childhood. All right, you guys, so that's it for this time's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to give it a huge thumbs up. If you're coming over from any of these channels and you clicked on that playlist and you're giving my family a try, I would totally appreciate for you to subscribe and stick around. I am a proud wife and mom of 3 beautiful children, and we have tons of craziness that goes on in our house, and I share all sorts of content here, everything from food related and Dollar Tree to wrap and chats and vlogs, and Vlogmas is coming, and I plan on participating in that. I've done that every year for the last 3 or 4 years or so I'm excited to do it again this year. But I hope you guys will stick around and come along for the crazy ride that is our family. If not, you guys, I still appreciate you watching, and I hope you try this recipe. If you do, please tag me on Instagram or Facebook, or come back, even just come back to this video and leave in the comments that you tried the recipe and what you think of it. I think my mom would love to see what you guys think of a recipe that she created. But all right, you guys, thank you again so much for watching. I love you guys all so much, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.